So, folks, if you could please, real quick, Jason Buckwhite's again. The unenviable job of getting debt control and tying everything this morning for the conference. Now, since it's dinner, I get to hand it off to a much better person to handle and MC the dinner, the absolute master of ceremonies when it comes to all of this stuff, and somebody who I adore. So, thank you so much for being here, Dean Strawson.
Right back at you, Jason. So being a mistress of ceremonies is really light duty. You are a much more docile crowd than the last one I used to preside over regularly, namely the National Board of Directors of the American Civil Liberties Union, A5 very argumentative, opinionated civil libertarians who are constantly debating each other and New Robert's Rules of Order backwards and forwards, but you guys are being so docile. So this has been an absolutely extraordinary day. I have to say, I had very high expectations, but all of you have exceeded the expectations in terms of the insights, the inspiration, the challenge. Many of us really loved Ellie's final description of CITI as a state of mind, or to use current lingo, vibe, because that vibe will continue, and I know all of you will continue with the unique spirit that has been described today. Before introducing the next moderator for the first series of toasts that we have arranged for you during the evening, I want to really underscore thanks to the two current staff members, or I guess I have to say former staff members of CITI. Many of you were here at a time when there were seemingly dozens of people who were working at CITI. I always thought of those little clown cars where people just kept coming out and coming out. You had very small space, but many bodies and brains. And all of that work has been carried out recently by two superb individuals, Jason Buckwhite and Corey Spencer, and absolutely irreplaceable. And now, for the first series of tributes, I have the pleasure of reintroducing somebody who, as the old cliche goes, needs no introduction. Robert Pepper, who was already introduced earlier today, among many, many, many other illustrious positions, he has been a really effective and instrumental chair of the board of CITI and leader in all the sectors that we've been talking about today: policy and academia and commerce, a visionary from the beginning through the ongoing lives.
Thank you, Nadine. That's quite an introduction. Today's been an incredible day, and I would have to agree, Ellie, it's not just CITI that's a vibe, you're a vibe, right? And so and the energy levels. You know, Ellie's one of those people who writes faster than most people read. I can't believe when I take a look at all the articles and the books and everything else, and adding a huge amount of knowledge. And we talked about that all day. And today was actually a perfect example of what Ellie has built in terms of the impact of CITI. I don't know of any place else anywhere that has the kind of both breadth and depth of discussion that's, you know, it's not just academic. It actually gets into nuts and bolts and people not necessarily agreeing, but intellectually, you know, getting involved deeply. And we're going to miss that as CITI, but Ellie, we all expect and we need you to stay engaged and involved. And so that's not going to go away. You know, I first met Ellie, it's 42 years ago. I was doing some work, and I mentioned earlier today on some of this crazy thing where both of us were working on maybe cable TV networks could compete with telecom networks and vice versa. And it's been a great ride since, and being a partner in some things and, you know, a student in others. So this is the first batch of people with testimonials. And some of it's going to be on video, and Jason's going to make that work. And the first speaker by video, and he was, so he had to do something short because he was.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Oh, there we go. Lee Bollinger, a former president of Columbia University.
Congratulations, Eli, on a very distinguished career. I really want to thank you for the time we spent together working in the Senate to develop the free speech rules and standards and norms for the university. You were a great partner. You were wise. You were smart about everything. And it was really a great pleasure for me to work with you in that context. So congratulations. Really, it's a wonderful career that you've had. Thank you.
An indication of Ellie's influence globally. The next speaker is Doreen Bogdan-Martin by video from Geneva. She's the Secretary General of the ITU. And thank you. No acronyms. The International Telecommunications Union. And it is the global organization that deals with all of the issues on telecommunications, radio, networks, standards. And they're a major player, and they have a part of the ITU focuses on development.
Oldest international organization.
Oh yes, it is the oldest international UN organization, founded in 1865 when it was about telegraphs. And Doreen, by the way, is really the only woman elected in the history as the Secretary General or to one of the management parts of the ITU. So Doreen is a big fan of Ellie's, as you'll see.
If I had to describe Ellie's legacy in one word, it would be visionary. He has always been a big picture thinker ahead of his time, separating the signal from noise in a field of constant and increasingly rapid change. Most people spend their lifetime going wide or deep into a discipline, but I think it's fair to say that Ellie has successfully done both. Best of all, he's been generous enough to bring so many of us along his journey of discovery, especially through his leadership of Columbia Institute for Tele-Information, or CITI. A review of the CITI community members over the past years reads like a who's who Hall of Fame for the telecom industry, including at least 3 FCC chairs, internet pioneers from Vint Cerf to Bob Kahn, and other luminaries across the US and beyond. Ellie's leadership was felt here at the ITU as well, and I still remember, like it was yesterday, our Future of Voice workshop back in 2007, where as chair, Ellie pinpointed the key issues facing the telecom world as its traffic migrated from copper PSTNs to next generation networks. His prior research also left us with an incredible intellectual framework of no less than 16 C's for any successful e-commerce policy, many of which ITU members still continue to grapple with today. Some are straightforward, but we still need to make universal, for example, connectivity and capacity. Others, we are still learning about, especially when it comes to new technologies like artificial intelligence, because digital touches everything. And the insights, the energy, and the expertise of visionaries like Ellie Noam are essential to shaping policy so that we can empower people everywhere. So on behalf of the ITU family, as we wish you the best in your next chapter, allow me to leave you with 2 more C's. Cheers to you, Ellie, and congratulations.
That was great. I haven't seen these. In the program, Matthias Kurt was supposed to speak next. He was supposed to be here in person, but because of some travel, something couldn't make it. Matthias has been a big fan of and partnered with Ellie for many years at CITI. He was the former chair of the German telecom regulator, and then he was in industry, but Matthias couldn't make it and sends his regards. Next, we have Reid Hundt, who you just saw live, but Reid also did a testimonial video.
Hello, Ellie. Hello, Nadine as well, and everybody else. I just want to congratulate Ellie on a terrific run, more than 3 decades, and being a great advisor and great friend to me. When I first became the FCC chairman in 1993, Ellie was one of the very first people in the country who was willing to come and teach me the ropes of being a regulator in the emerging communications technology space. He invited me to teach in his class. I taught at Columbia 1 year, 1 whole semester. We've been friends all these decades. It's been a fantastic run, and very few, if anyone, has done as much over the decades to help shape public policy in the telecommunications area. So thank you for what you've done for the country. Thank you for what you've done for me. Thank you for what you've done for all the students that you've taught at Columbia, and congratulations on this glorious event.
Well, got to call up Castulus Kolo because Castulus is here, which is great.
Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, and above all, dear Eli, Nadine. My name is Castulus Kolo. I'm from a German international university devoted to media and communications, and I'm happy and honored to say a few words on the occasion of Eli's withdrawal from some of his many activities, so I'm not entirely sure whether this moment should be called retirement. In any case, it marks the beginning of a new phase. I have known Eli longer than he has known me. We first crossed paths almost 25 years ago during his lectures for a media MBA in St. Gallen, Switzerland. I arrived there as an industry practitioner with a background in particle physics, and soon converted into a media academic. From that point on, Eli, you became an academic role model for me, and as we have learned today, I'm not the only one. Eli bridged, among other, his interest and also his understanding of technology with economics and policy, insisting that ideas matter most when they are ultimately connected to institutions and then having real-world consequences. We discussed that today. And he has also been a strong defender of universities, not only as places of knowledge production, but as spaces of encounter where ideas are tested face-to-face, disagreement is possible, provocation is welcome, and academic community can truly take shape. Thus, in Eli's case, what endures at least as much as his impressive body of work is the community he helped build and the intellectual culture he shaped. Eli made clear that academic life is not sustained by ideas alone, but by the relationships and conversations that allow ideas to develop. Examples for these initiatives in this context are the CITI lunch seminars and his engagement for the International Media Management Academic Association, for which I had the pleasure to serve after Eli as one of the chairs. I can say personally that Eli's encouragement often came in the form of questions. We had that today already. Questions that stayed with you, demanded clarity, and suggested sometimes quietly that more was possible. I have never experienced Eli as someone interested in dominating a conversation or closing a debate. Instead, he has modeled an intellectual presence that is observant, demanding, and quietly influential, often accompanied by that characteristic smile. I see it again. Signaling irony, curiosity, and a good humor all at once. Eli always reminded us that academic life is not only about arguments and critique, but also about joy, celebration, and shared moments. Whether at a festive dinner or on the dance floor, Eli knows how to bring people together beyond the seminar room. To conclude, dear Eli, Your legacy lives in the community you built, the standards you set, the joy you shared, and the many minds you helped shape. Thank you very much.
That's great. Castulus is president of Macromedia University, and for him to say, oh, he's learned from Ellie as an academic. But it's Castulus's point, you always do what you do with joy and a smile and encouragement. So thank you. Thank you, Castulus. Next is Richard Wiley, Dick Wiley. Dick was FCC chairman, and actually I think the first chair of Ellie's CITI advisory board. And Dick, for those of you who don't know him, in Washington, we call him chairman for life because he's really an institution in terms of the FCC for many years and has been extremely influential. And he's a big fan of Ellie's.
I regret that I am unable to attend this farewell celebration, but as a former CITI board chair and as a longtime friend of Ellie Noam, I want to briefly express my profound admiration and indeed awe for all that this great academic, scholar, teacher, author, futurist, public servant, and oh yes, airplane pilot has accomplished in his remarkable career. A career that he reminds us is not ending, but just taking a slight change in direction as he navigates a memorable birthday, completes a half century as a Columbia professor, and of course, prepares for his so-called retirement. But who else do you know who retires while publishing a new 600-page book, writing numerous articles, speeches, and also a TV miniseries script, organizing dozens of speeches and webinars and conferences, and of course, flying his own airplane several days a week. By anyone else's standards, this is definitely not a retirement, but instead full-time active employment. Yes, Ellie Noam is a marvel and truly a gift to this nation and the world's understanding of telecommunications, media, information, technology, and economics. So like all of us, I want to salute this Renaissance man and also thank him for his personal kindnesses over past decades. Ellie, as a fellow non-retiree, I want to look forward to many interactions with you in the future. So good luck. God bless.
So Rob Frieden, Professor Rob Frieden from Penn State, spoke today, this afternoon, and was on our session. Rob also has done a testimonial video. Rob, why don't you stand up or wave your hand so that, yeah, he's over here. And now you'll get to see yourself on the big screen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Frieden, Emeritus Professor of Telecommunications and Law at Penn State University. Ellie and I go back to the era of rotary telephones and AM radio. In my brief presentation, I'll provide examples of Ellie's specialness. A good way to do so involves the Special Code of Telecommunications, Academics and Professionals, acronyms, and numbers. Here's my dozen: CW, SOS, NYPSC, NARO, CWIP, OBE, CITI, TEB, TPRC 67, and 73s. Ellie first traveled to the U.S. via ocean liner. Commercial aviation options were just starting and didn't offer lounge privileges, frequent flyer miles, and other indicia of status, so why bother? The ocean voyage was an unexpected career-shaping event for Ellie. He visited the wireless Radio Shack on board and became enamored with the Morse code mode of telecommunications. In a few short hours, our quick study learned the code and the importance of continuous wave telegraphy for safe travel. Back in those days, before global warming became a thing, ocean liners had to dodge icebergs in the North Atlantic during winter. Ellie volunteered for the overnight shift and monitored the newly established Safety and Distress at Sea high-frequency Save Our Ship radio channel. Unlike the recent Titanic disaster, Ellie was alert and on task, able to advise the command duty officer about iceberg threats. This ocean voyage launched Ellie's career in telecommunications. Ellie unofficially holds several world records, one of which is an unrivaled encyclopedic memory of acronyms. His amateur radio and aviation expertise substantially add codes, as did his stint in the State Public Utility Commission at New York. Ellie served as commissioner at the NYPSC from 1987 to 1990. Public utility law and policy also require knowledge of indecipherable codes. NARIC stands for the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, which itself had generated such obscure initiatives and acronyms as the Ozark Plan, SPIF, SLU, and I don't have time to explain them. It's probably not worth the effort because they've been OBE, overtaken by events. There's a special acronym worth mentioning because it has cost consumers billions of dollars, some of which may have flowed to CITI-affiliated Citibank, without Ellie's knowledge, and of course not affiliated with Columbia University. CWIP refers to a special arrangement where utilities can recoup their investments plus a rate of return, generous, as expenses are incurred, even if a construction project never gets completed, like a failed nuclear reactor, or is needed to satisfy the demands of a few big users like data center operators. CWIP stands for Construction Work in Progress. Moving on. TEB refers to Ellie's happy place, the Teterboro, New Jersey airport. Ellie holds several pilot licenses, and his love of aviation includes several unofficial records, including most airports, private and commercial, visited, most airport codes remembered, most airline airport lounges visited, and shortest time in a foreign country. Ellie appears to have jet lag immunity. He gladly takes a red-eye flight to Europe, presenting at a conference in the morning and returning to New York later that same day. I'd like to conclude on a serious note. Ellie holds the real record for the most number of paper presentations at the Olympics of Academic Conferences in Telecommunications, the Telecommunications Policy Research Conference. His record spans over 50 years, a testament to his stamina and youthful start. Ellie has exceeded every scholar in the production of impactful work in communications. More than Wilbur Schramm, Harold Laswell, Paul Lazarow, Elihu Katz, Jorgen Habermas, Marshall McLuhan, and Noam Chomsky. A Google search for top telecommunications policy expert highlights Ellie. I'll conclude with an amateur radio code, not unlike the current middle school 6-7 code, which I have taken an oath not to explain. I wish heartfelt 73s, meaning best wishes, to my friend, colleague, role model, mentor, and scholar, Ellie Noam. Thank you.
That was great, Rob. I think you were implying that Ellie lives in his own time zone. Rosa Morales, you're here. Come on up. Rosa was on the panel this morning. Rosa, as she was introduced earlier today, was an intern and then assistant director of CITI, and now is an antitrust lawyer, which is great. So, Rosa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really, really nice to be here. I actually recorded a video which took me 25 takes before I came across as candid. But Ellie insisted that I do this in person, live. Okay, so as I alluded to earlier, this is a very bittersweet moment for me. It's a homecoming, but CITI never really left me. Now, given the occasion, it is tempting to think in terms of endings, but we all know, as everybody's been saying, that this is really not an ending, but a new beginning. But also it's because, as many of you have alluded to throughout the program today and recognize, this is really about honoring Ellie's life's work. It's a legacy that's going to endure well beyond these walls and this space. we can see from all of the CITI alums in this room and the distinguished guests who expressed how this institute's work has influenced their ways of thinking about policy, about markets, and about a whole range of ideas in this rapidly evolving digital world, that CITI has had an enduring impact. CITI's impact lives on in us. It lives on in its people, in its scholarship, and in the ways that we engage thoughtfully with the world. And that is all thanks to Noam, a great man, as we all know. You've heard all about him today. Now, another thing that I want to share about CITI is that, for me, and I alluded to this earlier, it's really much more than an institution that has acted as a platform for the exchange of ideas on cutting-edge issues. It also was a family, and it still is a family, an ever-growing one. And that's thanks not just to Ellie, but also Nadine Strauss and his better half. I think somebody said that, and I agree. So Ellie and Nadine, throughout the years, have created a space where relationships can genuinely be nurtured. Whether they were at the summer gatherings in Carmel, or over evening cocktails in their beautiful New York apartment, which some of you enjoyed last night and I couldn't join, where you were surrounded by hundreds of books, but much more interestingly, probably thousands by now. I mean, Ellie's beloved collection of owls, which I always thought was very odd, but fascinating and interesting, and probably there's no one in the world that has a larger collection of owls. But in those spaces, colleagues became friends and mentors became lifelong guides. Now, during my 7 years at CITI, we weren't merely observing the world. We were also immersed in its transformation. I remember the intensity of the work that defined that period. It was ambitious. Ellie has very high standards. And also embarked on Herculean projects that were developed over the course of years. I think someone earlier said that his books were so cutting edge, were so ahead of its time, that they had to keep getting updated, so they were never published until 10, 15, 20 years later. I lived those years. I remember that we collectively spent years pulling apart hundreds of industries for the media concentration book. During my time, we also worked on interconnecting the network of networks, on which we thoughtfully thought through how markets were moving away from monopoly structures and toward competition. And fast forward to today, as an antitrust lawyer, I work every day on matters in which the very concepts of competition and market power and market definition factor into my analysis and advocacy for clients. So these are all issues that we were discussing in the programs at CITI, and that now it's been more than 7 years, it's been more than 20 years now. We labored over for years at CITI. So I want to talk about the standards that I learned from Ellie and that I carry with me in my professional work, but also just personally. For one thing I want to say is the deep friendships, but also Ellie, what I learned from him was a very high standard of intellectual rigor, discipline, and integrity. And those are things those are values that I think have guided me throughout the rest of my life. I didn't know that I would learn that from you, Ellie, but I always think about you when I am facing something challenging at work or even personally. So to my CITI community, one of the things that I'll always cherish is how I grew over the 7 years at CITI. Ken, you remember our verbal sparring. I think we had a lot of constructive conversations. Alex, Joost, and many others who came back today. I look in this room and I think, wow, that was actually a golden era. We're all back, and we are back transformed. I believe Ken has just launched his new company, and Alex was at Nokia and now at BMW. Joost is a leading expert on gaming, and I am a lawyer. So you created very ambitious and successful people. Thank you, Ellie. I just want to say one thing, because I never told you this, but after having grown over the course of 7 years at CITI, Bob and Jim, Darcy, Richard, Ellie, the CITI family hosted an epic farewell that I'll never forget. They sent me off to my next chapter with a copy of Black's Law Dictionary. It was like probably 20 pounds. And my first laptop, which was cutting edge, which was probably also 20 pounds. But more importantly, Ellie and the family sent me off with the reassurance that I had earned my place in the broader conversation. So this is a full circle moment to be here and be moderating one of the panels that I used to just organize. Sorry. So that was a significant message for me. I want to thank you for offering that reassurance to me. So, Ellie, as CITI's doors close, even as CITI's doors close, your legacy lives on. It lives on in us. It lives on in your scholarship. It lives on in the foundations that you set and the community that you have built over the course of years that is here today celebrating your legacy. I am deeply honored and grateful that you allowed me to become part of that legacy, even if for that moment. Thank you, and best wishes in your next chapter.
So they're going to serve dinner now, the main course. Before they do that, though, Ellie, I just want to, as they're doing that, say that what you also heard throughout the day, but now, is it's not just your intellect, it's not just your high standards, your integrity, and the fact that you actually have made the world a better place, but also in this room, beyond this room, there's a huge amount of love for you. So thank you for everything that you have done.